Sit in that sadness, in that dark space, or we go, or whether we sit in that feeling and go, right, this is uncomfortable, I don't like it. I can either continue to be and sit in this space, or actually I can make a choice and take an action and take a step forward. And that step forward might not be the right one, but it's the fact that we still have the autonomy to make those choices and go,
yes,
right, yeah, this hasn't gone well. It's not what I expected. And the world looks very different now, but I still have the ability to make that choice to do something differently. Like, it always reminds me of the Matrix, yeah, and you've got the red pill or the blue pill, and like you've still got two choices. It's not like there's just one pill.
Yeah,
you still got two.
Yeah,
yeah.
I completely agree, and I think I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl from the concentration camps. He wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And he often cite his quotes of everything can be taken from a man, but the last of the human freedoms and the ability to respond in any given situation. And that's about choice. It's about choice. We can still choose. And he put that down to the reason why people survive and they didn't survive is because they chose, they had a meaning. At the end of the day, do we have a meaning in life? If we choose a meaning, then we'll go beyond any level of suffering. Really interesting. Yeah. So I'm joined today by a very special guest, Christo Hudson. I was introduced to Christo via the lovely Emma Henderson a few months ago, and we've chatted and we have just had so much to discuss, of which we're going to talk today. Christo is a pilot, or has been a pilot, and may still be a pilot, but has got 20 plus years of flying as a captain for a very well-respected airline, training captain. He's also been an investigator for incidents, black box investigation. But during COVID, as we all know, a very troubling time for so many of us, the world basically fell out under Christo's feet, and it led to the journey that Christo is on now. He has a business and a concept called the black box approach, in which he supports suicide prevention, mental health, and personal coaching and training. And he's absolutely passionate about it. And it came from a very dark period. And I think this is the amazing thing about when we own up to the troubles that we have mentally and physically, the most incredible results come out the back of it, and we are able to support other people. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you, Christo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's lovely to meet you and to be introduced by a lovely person in Emma. Yeah, it's really nice to be here and to meet someone who kind of gets me. I don't fly anymore, and so many people in the world of aviation is like, well, what do you mean? You were always Christo the pilot. How can you not be flying planes anymore? And I think that was part of the whole issue for me, is that my identity, if you'd cut me open, it was like there was Jet A1 running through my veins, and people just identified with me with flying planes. And I think that was part of my issue and struggles with my own mental health was down to exactly that maybe people saw me as the job title.
Yes, exactly, and identity, and that's something that we're going to expand on so much as we go through the conversation. But just give us a little bit of a background to how you got into flying, and then how you got to where you are now with the black box approach.
Yeah, it's a weird and wonderful journey. If you'd asked me 4 years ago whether I'd be in suicide prevention, I probably would have laughed. What are you talking about? It's been quite a journey. So initially, youngest of 4 boys. And that mentality of, big boys don't cry, man up wet pants. Someone recently, I'm going to try and coin it now, but talked about mental health as the Pilates and lattes and the yoga and yoga. And it was kind of just not this thing that we talked about. It was quite mystical. It was this magical thing, mental health, and it didn't really kind of feature in my life. Went to boarding school at the age of 12. And absolutely destined to fly planes. I'd spent most of my weekends with kites and rockets and throwing things out of windows with parachutes on, anything to break the bonds of Earth. It was like this passion I'd always had. There's no aviation in the rest of the family at all. But I even threatened to leave sixth form to join the Air Force. My parents were like, no, not happening. So I came up here to Edinburgh, where I've been for 24 years now, despite the very English accent. So came up to Edinburgh, met my wife, did mechanical engineering, which I thoroughly didn't enjoy. But I joined the University Air Squadron, where I learned to fly, and a bit like Emma, actually. So I joined the University Air Squadron, got signed up, and one of the offers in the University Air Squadron saw something in me that apparently they thought I was talented, would be a talented pilot. So I got streamed fast jet, went through officer training, and turns out I wasn't that talented. And fast jet service wasn't for me. I think most of my colleagues were well ahead of the curvature of the Earth, and I think my behind was still in the crew room, definitely behind the drag curve. So yeah, I was no longer a fast jet pilot. I became a commercial pilot, and initially my first role in commercial airline world was with Flybe, flying out of Edinburgh. Was a first officer, became a captain, became a training captain, and I just loved it. It was everything. It was that community based around the airport, not just with Flybe, but other airlines, the ground handlers, air traffic control. You know, when you're a local and you go into the same airport every single day, you get to know each other's voices, and it was just a wonderful place to work.
Real sense of belonging, basically. Belonging, isn't it? That wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was that, maybe a sense of belonging there that I'd not felt in the Air Force, because maybe I felt like a bit, I'm not as good as my peers. And it was wonderful. I thrived. Now, if I could work days off, I would, and much to my wife's, she's not that keen on that, but I would just do anything to be there flying planes, and then to be able to impart that knowledge as a trainer to other people. To new FOs and experienced captains. Maybe I was giving them a different perspective. But I think for me, it wasn't like the ins and outs of the engines and technical knowledge. For me, it was just like, right, let's maybe look at this in a different way. Maybe there's another way to look at these problems or issues we're facing. And I got involved into the safety department as a black box investigator, doing flight data monitoring. I just found it fascinating that we'd see all this data, but we'd really lack this human side. We'd see all this thing, and I'd run the reruns, and I'm like, what is going on here? And it was only if I picked up the phone and said, hey, how you doing? What's going on? What's going on in your world? But I'd get the human side to the data, and only then would I get the full picture of what was really going on. And I found that the common denominator with all the incidents and trends was that we're all made of the same squidgy stuff. And that when we go to work and we, whether you've got a captain's hat or a first officer's hat or not, and you hang up your coat, it doesn't stay there outside the flight deck. It comes in and it's part of us. It's what makes us unique.
Absolutely.
So it was wonderful. And I did that for a few years, and then this thing called COVID happened, and instantly, 4th of March 2020, I was in Manchester Airport ready to come home for the weekend. We just had our 4th baby, lovely house, lovely mortgage with it, lots of big bills. And instantaneously my world closed down, and that loss, not just the job and the finances and security, but for me, it was the loss of identity. Yeah. Despite the fact it said Captain Christo Hudson, pilot, that's all I kind of associated with, and that caused a lot of internal distress. But as the provider for the family, I had to put on this, everything's all right, don't worry about me, I've got this. But inside there was just meltdown. And then the next 6 months, and you've alluded to it as what we fondly call in the family baths, beards and booze. Because I didn't know that the bath, beards and booze that were going on for me, the behaviours I was displaying, were classic signs of a low mood, of a depression. But, mental health's not a thing. It's not going to happen to me. And, I grew this really dodgy beard. A beard that when you see on someone and you're like, you're keeping that? Is that a real thing? Yeah. So I grew the dodgy beard, and the family bathroom right behind me was my sanctity. It was the safe space that even the kids couldn't pick the lock. And it was just no one could get me there. I could drop the mask. I could just be me. And then the booze, which was really, it was escapism. It was a way to numb the pain, because I knew if I drank, then I'd not feel the way I was feeling, and it was I could shut it all out.
Classic.
But I didn't really know it was happening. I didn't know what was going on for me was what happens to so many other people across the world. Because I was a pilot, and I had to show strength, and I had to be strong for the family, and I had to be the breadwinner, and all of those things, and I just couldn't do them, and I couldn't deal with that lack of ability to deal with it. So yeah, that was that. And I smile when I talk about it now, because I'm like, if that hadn't happened, and as we talked before, Ben, if that hadn't happened, maybe the path wouldn't have changed. And talk about a series of actions of things that happened, and I had all these wonderful people around me that cared for me and loved me deeply. But it's just when someone asks me the question of how are you, and they genuinely meant it, like from a real place of empathy and concern. It was just that simple question they asked me that they basically changed my life, changed my world. And things happened. I was asked to write a letter to myself, and when I was like, come on, who does that? And I did it, and the letter is still here in my desk. It even got my name in it. It's typed because I can't read my handwriting, but it sits in my desk, and that was back in August 2020, and it was to be opened in a year, and it still remains unopened, because the contents of that letter is irrelevant. It was just the fact that I wrote it. That was that first step that I needed to take. Yeah. And so I trained as a listener, as a peer support volunteer. I got involved I did a mental health first aid course and the world of suicide prevention, because I took some calls that I could just hear that people were in so much pain, and they wanted that pain to stop. What I found on these calls was that actually I didn't have to fix it. I just had to help someone feel heard and seen for the uniqueness that they had in that they were. And when I did that, and I realized, oh my goodness, just by listening to someone and holding space for them, you can take them from a place where they want that pain to stop and potentially thinking about suicide, to a place where actually life's all right, and they're safe, and they're not isolated. And then I thought, well, what if I could teach other people to do that? I've got a training background. I'm able to open up a black box, and look in it and go, all right, there's some stuff in there. Maybe we'll unpick it. Maybe we'll close that box and not look in it again. But what if we could give anyone the opportunity to be able to hold space for someone when they're really struggling with something? That realization that we don't have to fix it. There are amazing people out there who can help with the fixing. But maybe people don't. Maybe they're not broken. Maybe people are just stuck. Maybe they just need a bit of a nudge. Like I needed a nudge.
Yeah.
So yeah, fast forward, and then I go to organisations, and initially, when the things have changed, but initially when I first started, I'd like to come and speak to you about suicide prevention. What's that say? And I was like, well, it says that that there's an issue and we need to talk about it. But there's a reason why when you're a pilot and you speak to people and everyone's like, wow, tell me about this. Tell me about a time. And then people want to chat about it. They're intrigued. When you're a suicide prevention trainer, and I want, rather than people going like this and shocked, to go, all right, maybe it's okay to talk about this. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable, but maybe it's all right. That's what takes me. That's what takes me here.
It's just an amazing story, Christo, and I think that the whole idea that you talked about identity, when we have that fixed one identity, it's a very dangerous place to be, because of course as soon as it's ripped away from us, as you well found, there's a hell of a hollow space behind it. So I think probably my first question is, what actually encouraged you to go and speak to somebody? Because as we know, from the male perspective, classic pilot job. We're the heroes. We always have been going out, solving the problem. We were conditioned, socialized to be like that and not talk about our feelings. And if you talked about your feelings, well, you were just left on the wayside. It was the tough ones who survived. And we needed that, didn't we, for many millions of years. So we're still hanging around on that whole concept of, us men have to be the heroes. The classic thing when I was playing rugby and cricket when I was younger, if there was a pretty girl that I was trying to impress came along, my performance just went up massively because I wanted her to tell me I was a complete hero, And of course, if I didn't play particularly well, I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to chat the lovely girl, and I'm going to be rejected and all the rest of it. So it is that whole identity thing that you've got to be this kind of hero champion coming along. But none of us are heroes, really. We just are taking one step at a time. So unlike so many blokes, what encouraged you just to talk to somebody openly? Because suicide is a transactional thing for men, isn't it? I mean, nearly 80% is the standard thing. Nearly 80% of suicides are all men because they make it transactional. I'm worth more dead than I am alive. So they don't go out, they isolate, and then they go out and they do it, of course. So why are you different? This is a big question. Why are you different? Why are you not 6 feet under? And why did you go and speak to somebody? And what's led you to this line?
And that exactly highlights the point, Ben, is that I didn't. Is that someone reached out to me. And what happens in the narrative is, and because of the social construct of that showing, that we don't ask for directions, and when we're putting the flat pack furniture together, we don't use the instructions. Yeah, all of that narrative that you've just so eloquently talked about is that so often, and I hear it, and it is one of my bugbears. So many people put out this idea is that I'm a safe space. Come and speak to me when you're ready. That doesn't work. That is passive support. The Samaritans are there waiting for your phone call. Shout is there waiting for your text message. Yeah? Counselors, therapists, they're there waiting for you to contact them. We need to reach in to people because the barriers that normally stop us getting someone that help, they're not the person that's struggling. They are ours because we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, or we think we're going to make it worse. And so this is where my narrative is so different. It was the fact that someone reached out to me and said, hey, it's blatantly obvious that you are really struggling. How can I help you? Rather than just waiting for me, who was sitting there drowning, looking around going, maybe I don't have the strength to reach out. So my concept is rather than training people to be trained as safe spaces, hey, I'm a lighthouse of safety, come and speak to me when you're ready, is that actually we need to reach out to people because sometimes they don't have that strength because of the social constructs that exist. So it wasn't the fact that I found the strength to say, hey, I need some support. It's the fact that someone went to me and asked me from a place of a genuineness. That's not a word, is it? Of that, how are you? I see that you are struggling, something's going on. What can I do to support you? And that's a very different shift of just encouraging men to speak because we've just highlighted that, female mental health and men's mental health have very different. The levels of oxytocin and the hormones that we generate in the times of adversity, females are much more likely to go and speak to other people to get that support, and chat things through. And as you've already talked about, it's like men's mental health are much more transactional, low levels of testosterone in the body, lower amounts of oxytocin in times of adversity, and we're much more likely to we have very different needs. We have a need for more of a need for status. We need more of an idea of we need to protect what is ours. There are lots of more complicated concepts with men's mental health. But yes, whilst I agree, we need people to be able to, to say, hey, I need some help. And that is strength when someone does that. I think we need more people in society who are prepared to go through their own barriers of, I don't know what to say. I think I'm going to make it worse. Oh my goodness, what if I ask them about suicide? Am I going to make them think it? But the analogy I always use at any of the training courses, I say to people, I was like, well, are any of you willing to, I don't know, marry me or get a mortgage with me? Or are any of you willing to give me all of your salary for the next year? And of course, people laugh and they go, no, don't be ridiculous. It's also a bit ridiculous to think we're that powerful that we could just pop an idea into someone's head to make them start having thoughts of suicide. We aren't, but how we are powerful is that if someone is having thoughts of suicide and we ask them, we then give them permission to say yes, if they are. So for me, it is all about the concept of training of people to break through their own barriers, of uncomfortableness, of, when someone comes back into work and they've been off for a bereavement and not knowing what to say, or we start typing that text message and we start typing it and then we edit it and then we edit it again. Oh, I'll send it later. And then actually we never send it. And it's not the words that we use. It's the fact that we reach out to people. That's what, for me, that's what showing empathy is about. It is trying to connect with that person on any sort of level. But people, I think, are so scared of upsetting someone or making it worse that they don't, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to offend them. But actually, I think those are our own personal barriers that we put up so it means that person doesn't get the help.
Completely. Yeah. And the big thing of shame, isn't it? Blokes have not, the societal construct is, blokes haven't talked about their feelings. If you want to be a warrior, you don't talk about your feelings. You just go and slap each other on the back. And if you've had a sword chop your arm off, you have a slug of whiskey and, a tourniquet put on it and you'll be all right, mate, kind of thing. And I read a study, I can't remember, it was one of the big universities did a study. They observed children in a school, young children in the school in the playground over months and months and months. And they came up with a conclusion that when boys are running around and somebody goes down, they're playing football or hide and seek or something, someone goes down, the boys just kind of jump over each other and carry on with the game. Whereas if one of the girls goes down, somebody will come along, pick them up and take them off and sit on the side and say, how you doing? Don't worry, it's okay. And which is interesting. So is that, I'm a big believer, as you are, with the whole autonomic nervous system and the chemicals that are being pumped around. I think that's the one thing, many things, but the one thing I would address, I'm starting to go into schools and do some talks about that, because I don't think the teenagers have any idea what's happening hormonally and chemically to themselves. Why? Because most adults have no idea either. So we don't understand that actually we're geared towards certain feelings, not because of just our personalities, because the chemicals are telling us to feel like that. So I think we have an awful lot to deal with. We've got to deal with the shame. It's perfectly reasonable for a bloke to talk to each other. But you can't notice somebody until you understand what's going on inside. So building that emotional wisdom, that emotional intellect inside is the first thing, because then after that, you can think about the people around you, i.e. the society intelligence, sociology, etc., or spirituality, or whatever. But if we don't do that, we just go down that classic male line of, I got to be the hero, I got to take people up, I'm saving lives, baby, I'm saving lives. And then, of course, when the cat dies and the distress chemicals come flooding in, they think it's not acceptable. But that's the same chemical, that's the same feeling as when you lose your partner or child, or you lose your parents or whatever. It's the same basic neurological stimulus which is flooding around the body. But we think, well, somebody else's pain is more legitimate than ours, and then we become shameful, don't we? But actually, neurochemically, it's exactly the same thing. So once we start to understand this, as you say, you rip people apart, and we all have things going on in a certain direction. So we've got to educate ourselves on that front, haven't we? And we just come from that classic alpha male environment, but
where you just crack on, where you just get told to crack on. If you've got a problem, you just put it under the carpet, and then 40 years later, the carpet's pretty runkled, and it's like, how do I do with this? But I for me, it is about education, because we, as you say, we've never been taught about this stuff or why it happens. I think we're always taught from a young age how to gain stuff. So we go to school to gain an education, we go to college to gain a qualification, we gain a relationship, you go and get a job, you go and get a house or get a partner, get a dog, get a child, and get a pension and all these things. When are we ever told how to lose stuff? Whether it is a loss of a job, or a loss of a friend, or a loss of identity. It's like, oh, we're always looking to gain stuff, but we've never been educated how to deal with loss. And then we get thrown a curveball and, oh, and maybe it's only in our later stages of life when our friends, as we get older and the body, our physical health starts to deteriorate. And that when our, people of our similar age start leaving the world as well. And it's like, oh, why is it that we're taught we have to learn on the trot? Is that the word? Learn on the, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like it anyway.
Learn on the hoof, that's it. No, is it on the hoof? That's it. Learn on the trot.
That's a good one. We'll coin it. That's Christo's new phrase.
That's like a fish out of a duck's back.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we learn on the, I'm going to coin that. We coin on the trot when we do start losing stuff. But we're always taught how to gain things, but maybe we're never taught how to lose stuff.
I think you're absolutely bang on, and it's that whole you're only acceptable if you've accumulated stuff, and it's the classic thing. Is, and I've learned this in coaching, in my coaching courses, is the concept of the advice monster. The whole point about coaching, like you talked about, is listening, seeing somebody, and really genuinely being interested in somebody. But we are taught, I think particularly men, is unless you have a knowledge that can solve the problem, that you're not worthy. So we think as soon as there's a problem, we've got to come up with a solution, i.e. advise somebody to do this and do that. And of course that people don't buy into that because they think, well, I'm still impotent. The only reason I'm succeeding now is because you've advised me to do it. And if it's gone wrong, well, it must be your fault, you complete dickhead kind of thing. So, it's that duality, that polarity that just rips us apart in one area. And you see that with somebody who cannot just keep their mouth shut. I see it in the flight deck all the time. So I've just finished my line training for the new company. I'm an experienced captain, but you go into a new company and you've got to learn all the new procedures, and you've got to learn how to sit next to a load more people in a very, very claustrophobic environment, and to be able to understand and listen to and soothe their uncertainties and personalities. And, everywhere I go, there's so much of the advice thing going on. And I'm guilty of that too, very much so. But we got to listen more. But that, again, it comes back to the whole shame of just asking questions. And of course, blokes don't like to ask questions or read the instruction manual how to do the flat pack IKEA thing, because we've got to have the answer. We can't refer to somebody who has unbelievable number of hours of more experience. We've got to be able to prove ourselves. And of course, and then you hide away, you isolate. It becomes an incredibly lonely place. And then you just think, well, I'm probably worthy more of not being here.
Mm-hmm. Where's the hope? What's the future?
Yeah.
It's about suicide in particular. We know is about pain. It's not about people wanting to die. So they want that pain to stop. And if they don't have those techniques or the emotional literacy to talk about what's going on for them because they've never been taught it, or they don't have the coping mechanisms of friends, of networks, of exercise or good sleep, or all those basic things that we talk about, which are basic for human survival. If they don't have those avenues, they look for a solution to a problem. The problem is pain. Well, how do I make the pain stop? Well, if I'm not here, the pain will stop. And it is, I mean, you've sparked a thought in me. You think back to all the briefings that we used to have or give before you go flying. And that final question is, does anyone have any questions? Well, of course the answer is no, because we've not given them really. It's a leading question really, isn't it? Rather than the question of what questions do you have, we have, do you have any questions? Yeah. Or it's like, when you go to your partner or your best friend at the end of the day, and that classic question of, did you have a good day? And we do that. We nod, don't we? Because we want them to say yes. Because it feels uncomfortable.
We're acceptable if we say yes.
Yeah. It's like, you're right. You're right. Please say yes. Because if you say no, I can't deal with that. So we kind of protect ourselves with the language that we use. I always remember setting off this classic phrase I'd hear so many times of like the captain or the first officer setting the power and just going, are you happy? It's like, well, it's not to do whether you're happy. It's like, do you feel safe? Do you think we've done everything we need to do before we hurtle this piece of metal with these people in it down the runway? And it's amazing how we can protect ourselves just with the language that we use.
Yeah, completely. It's
Do you
that
have any
uncertainty.
questions?
Yeah, yeah, and it depends on the inflection at the end of the sentence as well, doesn't it? If you come down at the end of the sentence, it's a statement. Have you got any questions? It's a statement. So in other words, it's a rhetorical question. Otherwise, I don't want questions for you. Well, you got any questions? It's that whole coming across as either a confident individual. If you inflect up at the end of anything you say, there's a level of uncertainty there. And we live in a very, very close environment as pilots, of course, and it's so obvious all the time what's going on.
Yeah. I always used to not trouble me, but when I would fly with someone and they'd make it a competition, I'm like, this is not the place for ego. It's not that. Let's do that on a tennis court, or let's do that somewhere else. Let's not do it in a place where when things go wrong, they go wrong really quickly. You forgot that check, or I think you'll find that, and it's like, let's have each other's backs here. We are genuinely a team. We've got a united goal or outcome, which is to get there as safely as possible. And if we've got one of us who's trying to make this, a show of strength, like, I know more about the part A than you, or that, I'm like, nah, let's not do that. It's not the place for that.
No, it's not, is it? And I do think that's shame-based. In other words, I'm not enough, so I have to pull everybody else's performance apart in order to keep small at the end of the day. And how do we become expansive? How do we increase our capacity? Emma talks about it. How do we increase our bucket size? And I think that's the whole thing. We talk about capacity, don't we? Situational awareness is a concept that is always being drummed into us as aircrew, of understanding that there's a mountain ahead, there's a thunderstorm up and below, there's aeroplanes all round, there's personalities right next to us, there's personalities in the back that might be influencing, there's personalities in other aeroplanes on the ground, air traffic control, of just having that great situational awareness. And if we just concentrate on that one tiny thing of trying to prove ourselves, then that just limits our ability for situational awareness. One of my things I'm trying to develop my concept at the moment is what is purpose, because people find that very difficult. What's meaning in life, purpose? And for me, I think one of my main purposes is the P's. So my purpose is the 3 P's, which is promote people's potential, as opposed to PAP, PAP, which is prove a point. I'm trying to sort of come up with that. But it's simple. It's trying to make things really simple, isn't it? Am I trying to prove a point here? Am I trying to prove a point that I really believe I'm small, so I have to try and make you smaller than me, rather than think, okay, let's go out and have this wonderful, healthy competition, laugh, slap each other on the back when we've made some silly mistake, and laugh about it and think, because as soon as it becomes a shame-based thing, the whole learning, the whole creativity, the whole innovation goes, and it leads to the crash. It simply leads to the crash.
Yeah, you think about the cockpit gradient, don't you? And that, if just because someone's got more stripes than you, that therefore they are always going to be right. And we're kind of drummed into, they're captain, and it's just we're all made of the same squidgy stuff. Yeah. And we're all susceptible to, having good days and bad days. And the way I think about it is that, the success of an organization or of a team is driven by every individual's state of their mental health, of how they are dealing with the little things and the big things in life that day. And how wonderful it would be if people felt, and of course you have to show vulnerability and a bit of courage and strength to do it. But if you could share with someone that you're working with, whether it's in the flight deck or on the ground or wherever you work or in your community, and say, you know what, I'm having a bit of a rubbish time today. Okay. Can you have my back today, rather than making someone feel worse with the fact that they feel that they're not coping that day. Even this morning, someone mentioned, about, when you go into work one day or you get out of bed, if you've only got 40% in your tank, that is your 100%. You've got nothing. Your 40% is 100%. You've got nothing left to give. So let's not. Let's kind of like go easy on people. It's this idea that we always have to turn up. You leave your personal stuff at the door. You don't bring that here. Well, you just can't. You just can't. That's what makes us us. We spend a lot of our time at work, and people often associate work as the biggest stressor in their lives. There are two guys, Holmes and Rahe, in 1967, and they talked about, the most stressful things that can occur to someone in life. And actually, it's the majority of those, the pressures that we feel, they aren't in work. They're at home, they're the relationships, they're the physical elements we have, they're the speeding tickets, they're the moving house, they're the council tax bill. And we tend to just, it's work that's giving me so much stress. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's the other things that we all experience as well.
Yeah, it's the accumulation of so many different factors, isn't it? And analysing, and of course anything can be the trigger. It's just the spark that ignites the fume, and the bang is the fume, but the spark is the tiny thing. And the easy thing to say, classic teenagers, when I have a grumpy moment, which I do, and I'm a bit stressed, there's loads going on, big responsibilities, I might be tired, not eating properly, had a just bad situation at work or home or whatever, and I'm with the kids. I talk about this all the time. And I got to a stage now of warning them if I'm feeling low, if I'm feeling at 40%, is it because I'm really trying to develop my emotional intellect, of course, of recognizing self-awareness. The key to all of that is understanding that I'm feeling low. I'm wanting to criticize. I'm wanting to condemn other people. I'm wanting to create havoc on other people. And I realize that's because I'm not feeling good myself. And so I apologize beforehand for being a bit of a dickhead to them. And I think we have to do that and turn up to a flight deck or turn up to any situation to say, I'm in a bit of a wankerish mood today, so please don't take it personally. But how much would that solve a problem? Because then it gives permission to other people to do the same, wouldn't it?
It is. Ben, that as music to my ears, is like what did you use the phrase? You're papping someone, yeah? You're proving a point when you're in that mood. Yeah. And it is, and for me, that's the uniqueness. I talk about, the stress container. I always bring out this when I'm talking about it, is like, we are all completely unique, and the size of how much stress we can take is down to, genetics, is down to adverse childhood experiences, growing up, where we're growing up, all those things. And some of us can take this much stress, and here it comes. Yeah, it sits on my desk. My wife thinks it's really funny. It's a bum vase, yeah, and I still don't know how to hold it, so it looks inappropriate. But, I bring this out. Some of us can take this stress, and some of us can take this much stress.
Brilliant.
But it's understanding that the stresses that also come into our lives are different sizes as well. Like for me, for example, the stress of the council tax bill, when you're a training captain in an airline, it's there. It comes every month, but it's kind of minimal. But when you have no finances coming in, you can't get a job. Oh, woe is me, but here comes the little violin. But I just go back to that moment of the council tax bill coming in, and I couldn't even get on job seekers. And it's like that stress that was minimal is now filled up my bum vase, And it's that, how do we respond to that? And there's a reason we go into the simulator. It's not just to learn that when these things happen, there is a safe outcome. It's also to learn how we respond under stress. So I know that I get a physiological response on my left side, and I become snappy. And I love the fact that you admit that. And I also share that with my kids. And that Harry, my 6-year-old, fiercely independent little lad, and he uses the language of, Daddy, your stress container's full. Because I've shared it with him. And it shows him that it is all right to have crappy days. But as long as we're self-aware, when we know that it's happening, just as you said, we can say, right, well, I can either react and I can go and pap someone. I love that. Have you trademarked it?
You can nick it, mate. You can nick it. I'm happy with that.
You can go and pap someone, or you can choose to respond and go, right, I'm having a shitty day. My stress container's full. My bum vase is overflowing. All right. Well, what can I do? I can take the red pill or I can take the blue pill now and choose and make a choice. I love it. Ben, I love the fact that you share that. It's amazing.
No, I think it's just about being honest. And that comes out the back of me not being like that, of launching into trying to attack people because of my own insecurities and feeling of not being enough, etc. And you've got to run away from yourself because it's all shame-based. I've gone down this road like you from some dark periods. In my teenage years, there was a lot of death, basically 3 suicides in a very short period of time, 2 from a very close family of ours. I nearly killed my best friend in a car accident. I nearly bloody killed myself by punching a window and severing an artery. In a fit of anger, blood's pumping away. The guy who lived opposite me, he was in a car crash when we were 17. His mate died. He had his stomach ripped open and spent months. So, for me, the idea that we could be gone so very quickly with silly, impulsive decisions of reacting to a situation, either taking somebody else's life or taking our own lives, it has always been of an interest to me. How do we actually prevent the worst of happening? But how do we also develop the tools, the understanding, the wisdom to make things so much better and to thrive and take responsibility? You just mentioned that word respond. How do we respond? Responsibility, as I always share, is broken down into two words. It's respond, ability. So an ability to respond to any situation. So we know impulsively our emotions trigger us to react without any sophistication at all. Brilliant, keeps us alive when we're being chased by a warrior. Just simple fight and fly thing. To be able to stop and just say, hang on, mate, listen, I'm a human being like you. Do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. That's being able to respond ably to the situation. And then you pacify, you soothe, you show empathy and compassion. So we're able to respond in that situation. But you've got to be honest. You've got to say, I'm struggling today. But, the important thing is that somebody's not hijacked by the fact that we're opening up. I mean, how many times have I had conversations with men and I start talking about feelings and emotions, and you can see the panic in their eyes, and I can sort of feel they're sort of grabbing hold of something and thinking, oh, and then the conversation changes to, oh, but don't you have a classic car, and don't you
what kind of football?
What timber? Yeah, let's talk about the football. Exactly, which is lovely, and we all have that. Yeah, exactly. And I love all that because I like my physical exercise and I like building stuff and smashing stuff and doing the whole traditional male things. But I also like the classically feminine things of talking about emotions, really investigating from the inside. The other concept of femininity, look at the spiritual side of things, is that it not only is it empathetic and compassionate, but it's also can be very fiery, to do with passion and creativity. And it's so easy to shut either side down. We do have a proclivity or a tendency towards certain neurochemicals, but we can also help train ourselves in other directions. And that, for me, is being responsible, being able to respond to the current situation in humanity, where we're not just about survival. We are here about thrival, but because we've lost that understanding of that connection, what our purpose and meaning is, people are actually dying in their droves and struggling to survive. So again, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. How do we notice other people are struggling, and how do we bring that conversation up? How do we make it feel comfortable for others not to talk about classic cars and the football, and actually talk openly? And you say they don't have literacy. Most people don't have the literacy to talk about it in the first place.
Yeah, because we've never been educated. There are two things. Just hearing you talk about that, breaking down that the word responsible, is that ability to respond. And I think we have a duty to ourselves and other people to understand that poor mental health and mental illness can happen to anyone. It is an equal opportunities mongrel. So maybe we have a responsibility when we are able to have a look in the mirror and say, right, what are the things that work for me? What are the things that keep me well? What are the things that I enjoy? And we talk about creating a suicide safety plan, for someone that maybe struggles with suicidal ideations, so that when they don't know which way is up or down, they can refer to this very simple piece of paper that says, right, when you are struggling, you may demonstrate these behaviors. These are the things that bring you joy. This is your favorite photo. This is your favorite place. This is your favorite Taylor Swift song. This is this is how you get in contact with this person. So we have a responsibility when we are well to be responsible to ourselves when we are unwell. So I think that's having that moment of, okay, what if this was ever going to happen to me, what do I need to do to take myself to becoming well? What are the actions I need to take? And I think, you really hit me with that, right? Well, at that time when we are well, we are able to respond. Up at I don't know how high you go in your new aircraft, Ben, but the time of useful consciousness, we don't have that. We aren't able. Sometimes there's a decompression. We don't have the ability to respond. So we have to train ourselves that when we are well, this is what I'm going to do. So when I become unwell, I know to put on my oxygen mask first. That's what we do. That's why we train
exactly. Breathe. That's one of the basic tools of life, isn't it? To breathe properly. It's a great metaphor in an aircraft.
Yeah. And I had another point that I was going to bring up, and it's going to be really profound, Ben, but I've already forgotten. That's that's why I always need a checklist. You talked about being, so I think we have, you were talking about how we can spot the signs. Well, we have to know the people we work with. We have to know the people. We have to have the, chit chat. I mean, the Samaritans ran a public campaign last year. Small talk saves lives. And I think the small talk, chatting about the weather and what's going on in people's lives, that's how we get to know them. That's how we get to hear their baseline behaviors. And it's only then when we notice an absence of normality that something's not right. And it is our duty, because not everyone knows when something's wrong. Some of these things can be, I didn't know that baths, beards and booze were a sign that I might be experiencing depression. I didn't know that. For someone to go to me, it's great to see you got a beard, but I've also noticed that, and I don't feel like you've been yourself recently. Now, I'm not saying you're unwell or you're not you. I'm just saying, from my opinion, I don't feel like. It seems to me like you've been avoiding situations, and it is telling them from your perspective what you've noticed. And you may be completely wrong, but unless we tell them what we've noticed, they may never know that. They may not know that these changes are going on. And if we have a society where it is really difficult, and that's what we're trying to change, it is really difficult for especially men to put their hand up and say, you know what, I am struggling here, I need some help. Because we make it hard for them. And maybe it is our duty as responsible people, we are able to respond to the changes that are going on for other people.
I think you're absolutely right. And interestingly, talk about one particular person. Well, this is a fairly common thing, but one person I used to fly with was always absolutely fine. So if the shit was going on at home or hadn't had any sleep, we were in the simulator, absolutely drunk as a skunk the night before, in the morning, how are you feeling? Yeah, fine, mate, fine, absolutely fine. Everything was always fine. And I think that is really dangerous. That's really dangerous, because that's the kind of person that will suddenly top out, and then before you know it, doesn't turn up to work and somebody's banging on the door and it's too bloody late. I think, interestingly, is we've got to be courageous enough. So Winston Churchill talked about this, is that fear is a reaction and courage is a choice. We've got to choose. It goes back to your beginning, we were talking about at the beginning. It's about choice. We've got to choose to have those uncomfortable conversations with people who are very closed down and may give you that flash look of, don't be an arsehole, stop talking about my feelings, it's none of your business, don't air your dirty laundry in public and all that sort of stuff. We've got to be able to trigger them to do something. So for me, we're so worried about how people are going to respond to us. So we say something and they look at you as though you're a complete arsehole or shut up and all the rest of it. So then we don't have the courage to actually say something. But actually, it is the responsibility to say to someone, how about this, how about that? And they may go completely nuts, but you think, actually, this seed is sowed, because there may be 4 other people who say it in the next 6 months, and it may prevent them. If we haven't done that in the first place, we could be responsible for them jumping over a bridge in front of a train. I mean, it sounds morbid, but no, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity. Everything that's difficult, every challenge, every emotional challenge is an opportunity, and other people thinking we're complete dickheads is actually a challenge. It can be a beneficial thing. We've got to start to address it in a different way. And in a world of aviation and a world of being the traditional kind of male, it's bloody uncomfortable to change things. But this is where I think you and I are very fortunate in the fact that we somehow have been able to respond ably to the dark times in our lives and the challenges, and think, actually, we're geared here towards bloody well supporting humanity. And rather than trying to protect ourselves, the self-consciousness of not being enough dominates, and you stay small, We've got to go beyond that. We've got to be bloody courageous and make that change by noticing other people and triggering other people's emotions, whether it be a happy emotion or a sad emotion. We've got to have the courage to do that.
Otherwise, we never give them permission to talk about it. So we talk about this phrase of people suffering in silence because no one ever gives them permission. It's any of the courses I always talk about. There's a guy called Johnny Benjamin, MBE. We talk about the risk factors for suicide, and not everyone that dies by suicide has a mental illness. There's a massively increased risk, but it's not always the case. And Johnny, it's a documentary on Channel 4, and it's called Stranger on the Bridge, and it is a wonderful story of how a guy who just on his way to work with no training whatsoever, was able to just walk up to this guy who was clearly about to end his own life and say, "What's going on? It's not right that you're standing on the wrong side of the bridge. Stating the obvious. Are you thinking of ending your own life?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am." But every single one of these other commuters who could clearly see what was going on, they put the blinkers on because I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. You know what? I think I'm going to make it worse. So it's safer for me to stay small and just stay in my lane.
Yeah,
whereas actually all it took was just that simple question. That small talk saves lives. The Samaritans, they've been working with Network Rail to, we're seeing an increased risk of suicide on the rail network.
Yeah.
And they ran 2 campaigns. They do a lot of campaigning because we need it. It is such a serious issue. And one of them was just called, "Do you have the time?" See a stranger who is looking vulnerable and just to ask them, "Hey, have you got the time?" Yeah, and of course you might have your own watch. You've probably got a phone, but it's the fact that you ask someone a question who at the time may be feeling so worthless. There is no space in them for them in the world. That someone asks them, "Have you got the time?" or "Do you know where to get a cup of coffee?" Something as small as that. That can be all it takes to burst that bubble, to help them feel seen and feel worth, like some sort of worth. Just a question. Do you have the time? Or what's your opinion on a coffee here?
Yeah, completely.
And that can be all it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely bang on. And I talk to the kids about this. They walk over a bridge. I've shared this on a few of the podcasts, but they walk to school from my house or from our house. And because of all the death and suicide that happened as a teenager, for me, I talk about that a lot because I want them to see that it's a good thing to be talking about this sort of stuff, however uncomfortable. And I just remind them and all their friends as well when they come over, and my kids start rolling their eyes. So, "Oh God, his dad with one of his life lessons again." Is like, "Just be careful when you come around to my house. My dad's going to give you a life lesson." Anyway, what I say to them is that when you walk across that bridge, if you're listening to your music and you head down and you bump into somebody because you haven't noticed them, how would you feel when you see in the local news that somebody has topped themselves on that bridge? And how would you feel? You wouldn't know, of course, and it's not about knowing the outcome. But if you walk down that and you get your head up and look around and that person looks really sad and grumpy and you give them a good old smile, that is enough. You don't even need to say anything. You don't even need to say a conversation. You just got to smile at them, and that will trigger that tiny 0.001% of a level of worth. It's like, actually, I'm going to make it through another day. And then they walk down the road and they think, well, that person smiled at me, so I'm going to smile at that person. And that person smiled back at me. It's like, shit, that's 2. Right. So now we're at 0.002% chance of having a worth. It's so simple, isn't it, really? But if we have our bloody heads down with the headphones in and we don't notice what's going on, we don't take any notice because our consciousness is the dominant factor, i.e. we keep ourselves small. Don't say anything because I'm going to look silly or I might make it worse. That is about self-conscious behavior dominating, and it's not responsible. It's not responsible. I know that because I'm an introvert by nature, and standing up and doing these podcasts and doing YouTube videos and exposing myself to the whole world, let alone the aviation community, is bloody uncomfortable for me. But I feel a real sense of responsibility, and I know that you get that because you're in a similar situation.
Yeah. I sit on the cusp of introvert extrovert. Put me in front of an audience where I can channel this message, and it genuinely, I feel like we get afterburners, and I'm like, let's get this message out there. But actually, when I want to recuperate, don't talk to me. I just need to be on me. But it is as simple as that, and it really frustrates me. I think we are genuinely losing the ability for social connection. When I do go to London, and I will try and do that and engage with people on the tube, and people are like, why are you doing that? You just stay in your lane. Like, we are losing the ability to smile at someone, and then for not them to think, like, what do you want? Like, you're going to kill me. It's like, no, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I think we are losing, so many, I go on, deliver webinars and talks, and the general consensus is that you don't turn your camera on. And it really is like, well, as soon as I do this, all you've got is the way I speak and my tone of voice. And we lose so much. People blow their backgrounds. I'm like, no, I am inviting you into, the amount of rubbish in these cupboards. And no, this is my life. This is my office. This is my bedroom. We need to be present, and we need to be able to show, we hear this phrase of genuine, authentic selves. And I'm thinking like the version, a genuine version of yourself, because we can't always be the same. But we need to interact with people. It has a positive effect on them. Just as you said, even if it's that tiniest thing that bursts that bubble, to think, oh my goodness, they actually smiled at me. They took the time. I love this responsible. They were able to respond to a situation and choose to smile at me rather than putting the blinkers on.
There's so many concepts. Actually, looking about it, this is good. Look, I'm now dripping with sweat, right?
Ooh,
so I could be hiding that.
Yeah,
the stupid thing is, I know. Well, the thing is, it's 27 degrees outside, and because I love the birds and the atmosphere coming in, I didn't think to close my window. So, but that's me. I can't change that. I can hide away and go down here. I think I probably have. I've been trying to hide it a little bit, but in the interest of being open and responding over to the situation, I'm a bloody human being. Yeah. So that's the way it is. I mean, people are going to laugh about it, but there we are. I'm going to get that self-consciousness out of the way, fess up to the self-consciousness, and then it doesn't become so hard, and realize that we're all like that. We're all, as you say, you cut somebody open and we sweat for a bloody reason because we're trying, our temperature control is needing to do something.
Yeah, we can't choose that. We can't, like, the way we respond to stress, we can't, the way we instantaneously react, like, your body is trying to do stuff. It's like, well, when someone's stress container is full and the bum vase is overflowing, it's like, well, that is the response. I can't choose not to have a physiological response in my left-hand side, but I can understand when it's happening. And then it's that, for me, it's that level of self-awareness. And if we could share that with other people, by letting them into our worlds, it shows them that we're human and they're human, and it's like, it makes it much easier for people to communicate when we're honest.
It's so true, isn't it? Actually, going back to, I love that. I'm going to start developing this idea. Is that what do we do? So the maximum level we fly at in a Gulfstream is 50. You can fly at 51,000. We're not certified under the European regulations to go above 49,000. But we're often flying at 45, sometimes 47. Rarely at 49. But as you say, the time of useful consciousness to the non-aviation people listening is really how long, if we have a massive decompression and we're having to suck in the outside air, how long does it take before we pass out and it's all over? Well, it's a matter of split seconds, but you can change your body's ability to deal with that by being physically fit, having slept well, being less stressed, getting on top of it. So there are all so many different tools. I went for a swim this morning, did a little Instagram post just to say, have you ever noticed that elderly people go out early in the morning and they do the swim? Well, because they've developed their intelligence, their wisdom, their emotional and spiritual intelligence to understand going out and get a bit of cold exposure is very good for the body emotionally. And to go out into nature is very good spiritually and socially, etc. So there are always the little tools. I think when we're being racked by the flood of cortisol, the stress drug, and everything's coming down on us, and we're thinking, what are we going to do? What do we do to enable ourselves to have better a better response to useful consciousness, or better an extended useful consciousness. And doing the exercise, breathing is a massive one. Doing the exercise, not isolating is a massive one, which prevents suicide. I think that's the number one thing, isn't it? That isolation is the worst thing possible, because that's what kills at the end of the day.
Yeah, we are social beings. Whether we say whether introverted or extroverted, we need that social connection. We need other members of the herd. But how we connect with those other members of the herd is, men just go, well, do I have to go to therapy? Because if I'm going to give something like give my time to therapy and do something I don't want to do, like talk about this stuff, well, I want something in return. I want to see an instantaneous result. But it's not just that. It is going to a football match. It is going out in nature. It's like connecting. It's not, we don't just have to talk about everything. We can find other ways, just as you say, to keep ourselves physically fit. We don't just do one thing. We don't just go running, do we? We do maybe lots of different things for our body, or we get good sleep, or we're hydrated well. There's never just one pill. And I think we need to get away from that idea, especially with men's mental health, that, just have therapy, that'll sort you out. Well, no, I don't. We have different needs. We need this idea of, having a sense of status, having a sense of worth. And there are lots of things that we can do in our lives to provide us with those things, but it's just having that knowledge, really. And that goes back to our original point. It's about people being educated on the stuff that we never learned about.
Yeah. And again, it's making choice. We can always say, well, but nobody, I was having this conversation with somebody recently who asked me, do you really think that you're free? And I said, I do. Yeah, but society tells you how to think and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, they do, but then you still have a choice to actually go out and educate yourself. We are in a world now where we have universities on our phone. So if we want to go and educate ourselves, that's great. But then the answer came back, well, yeah, but how do you know whether it's legitimate or it's some cynical bastard telling you how to think? It's like, well, you'll only know when you try and you keep going. And I think, well, that is a very defeatist attitude. Is like, what's the point? And this is what I noticed actually about the probably the younger generation, is that because of all the social media posts and the need for attention to promote the idea of not being enough, it can be monetized. So you understand it from a marketing point of view. I think that's the education. Do you understand the message of negativity coming towards you is not because the world's in a terrible place. It's because they know they can get your attention, and then they can flog something to you. They can either, get attention because they're desperate to be noticed themselves, or they can sell you the makeup, or they can sell you the boob job, or they can sell you the tattoo. I mean, Christ almighty, the amount of times I'm walking down here in Malta, everywhere, the amount of people that have tattoos these days, because for me, the whole idea is that they don't feel as though they're enough. So they're trying to break out of the bonds or the boundaries of not being enough by sticking something else. And it might be a haircut, it might be the tight clothes, it might be the extra muscles that you get, whatever like that. And I think, that for me is interesting. It's that whole concept about the external thing will solve the problem, but it doesn't, because you still have to wake up at 5 in the morning with very bad breath, hair all over the place, whatever it is, and the muscles ain't going to be attractive to anybody, particularly you. And when you're trying to find the loo handle and all stuff like that, you still got to face your conscience. And so the conscience comes from within. So doing the education from within is absolutely the most important thing. It's the seed of everything. It's the oak tree that's planted to grow in many years and to leave a legacy well beyond our own generation. We've got to start understanding the emotional side of things, the autonomic system, which you talk about a lot.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the science behind things. And I admittedly don't know enough about it. I still want to learn more, because people often challenge me on some of the concepts, and I think people kind of want to hear factual. Quite often, people want to hear factual answers. It's like depression. There are all these different theories, due to it always happens as a result of a chemical imbalance, and I think that has been more recently disproved. That someone experiences depression as a result of a chemical imbalance. When someone takes an antidepressant, we know that the levels of serotonin go up instantly, but they can take 4 to 6 weeks before they start working. So yeah, I don't know. It's about getting, for me, it's about just transmitting this message to as many people as I can that it's all right to talk about this sort of stuff, but we don't have to talk about it. And that's what I call it, the black box approach. We can open up the box, we can have a look in it, and we might decide that we just want to close it and never look at it again. But we need to be given that opportunity to do it, to give permission to someone to see what's going on. Because if we don't give them permission, maybe they don't have the strength to, to ask for help. So maybe we need to be responsible to do that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And know that we may hear something from other people who are struggling that's going to make us feel tremendously uncomfortable. And we, as you mentioned, that guy on the bridge, most people on the bridge is like, well, maybe I'm going to make it worse. Well, I'm sorry, but you've got to take that. You've got to take that risk. Like, risk is an inherent part of our evolution in life. In order to go on a mission, I talk about it. You can plan a flight for days and weeks and months and years with thousands and thousands of people involved. But at the end of the day, you've got to take a risk. You've got to get on the end of that runway and you've got to whack those power levers forward and put a bomb into the engines, knowing that anything could go wrong. Yeah, but the preparation for it and the fact that people have lost their lives in the past means we have a greater chance or a greater probability of achieving a successful mission. But we've got to take a risk. There is inherent risk in everything. So when somebody is feeling unsure about themselves, you've got to go to them and just say, are you okay? And take the risk of the fact they may look at you as though you're, evil, or you don't know what to do, because you're only going to start to get better. You're only going to start to build your logbook of experience of dealing with helping other people deal with their emotions by giving it a go. You've got to do that first takeoff, and you've got to do that first landing, however uncomfortable it is. And again, it's the responsible thing to do. Actually, just touching on that idea that we need proof. This is a classic Western thing. We've had to have proof. The classic thing is that we need scientific proof. Prove it to me. Whereas the Eastern traditions, I'm very much into the sort of Buddhist yogi type thing of stripping away the human being and seeing that we are just a being, borrowing a body from the earth. I love that concept. Makes it much easier for me to understand in terms of storytelling. Is that actually spiritualism is all about understanding what's going on from within instead of needing some scientific proof. The beauty of it now is that so much scientific proof, the West meets the East, and we're all flying in the same ship together, as opposed to saying, well, that's a load of our bollocks. And I think that's what gives me the hope and the excitement. And I'm made up about it. I don't have a lack of hope. I know very well that there are massive challenges and we've got to do something about it. But for me, there's every hope. I think there's every hope.
Yeah, it is. But some people, I think it can feel like that there is none. There's no hope to pain ending, and maybe some of us have got the power to hold that hope for them. It's maybe we don't always need answers. Maybe there are some things we just don't know. Yeah. And that's all right. We can be all right with uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. Part of the process is actually, and this is the other. I'm going to have to finish up in a minute because I've actually got to go flying. Right. And but this is the whole thing about. I've lost my train of thought now, but the whole idea that you can just say, I don't know, and I'm feeling crap or whatever, instead of this toxic positivity, which Viktor Frankl talked about, the whole tragic optimism versus toxic positivity. Yeah, it's all fine. Let's deny it and let's pretend it's not happening and just man up and drink your beer and all that kind of stuff, which causes all sorts of problems. In contrast to the tragic optimism is knowing that life is bloody difficult and there's some serious tragedy out there, but still knowing that there is a meaning for life and we don't get no choice about being born and we're going to die at some point, but we do have a choice of how and when and what our legacy is going to be when we die. So let's just take responsible action and do what we can to benefit humanity in that short period of time that we're around. And it really comes back to choice, as we're talking about. There is a choice. Yeah. There's a choice to talk to people. There's a choice to isolate ourselves. For me, the choice, and it sounds very finger pointing, it's not good enough to take our own lives because at the end of the day, in fact, it impacts on humanity in a terrible way. And that's not meant to say I'm going to criticize somebody who tries to take their own life. I want them to bloody well talk to me, and I want them to talk. I want to talk to them to help them find some meaning and purpose and passion in life. That's my goal.
Yeah, I think we know that within everyone there is a living part. There is a living part, because people don't want to die. They just want that pain of whatever is going on in their life to stop. And if we can take that responsibility to help them find it, it's that realization. Yeah. And if we can do that, and it is simple as, that smile, how are you, and genuinely meaning it, that is the smallest thing that could genuinely change someone's world. And that's all it takes, is just us taking responsibility to do that. And next time we walk down the street, rather than just sticking our earpods in and our blinkers on, how about interacting with the smallest of smiles or nods? And that can make a massive difference.
Lovely. Well, that's a wonderful way. The one tiny thing we can do is just look up and smile at people. I think it's so valuable. This has been absolutely brilliant, Christo. We haven't actually met face to face yet.
Oh, we do.
And the skin, we haven't had skin on skin. Yeah, but we'll get that really soon when I come up to Edinburgh or you come down this way, whatever. Our paths are meant to meet at some point. But so, how do people find you? You've got this wonderful concept, the black box approach. How do people find you?
I spend most of my time on LinkedIn if I'm not running around after the children. So you can find me on LinkedIn or www.theblackboxapproach.com. I will always speak to anyone about anything I do, and I always finish any sort of talk that I'm on about moving our supports from being passive, and we kind of started with it, Ben. The fact that people say, I'm here for you, come and find me when you need me, it doesn't always work. There's a guy in the States called Dr. Frank Campbell, and his work in suicide prevention is actually, he talks about postvention. So where there is a suicide, it's about supporting the people that are left behind, because we know they are potentially vulnerable themselves. And when supports are passive, according to his studies, on average, it takes people 5 years to get the support they need. When there's been a suicide, him and his team, they go out to those people that have been affected, the friends, the families, the colleagues. So the supports become active, and the amount of time it takes those people to get the support has gone from 5 years to 35 days. Which is
absolutely
magic.
Wonderful to hear. That is magic. That's music to my ears. And let's be part of that to bring it down to less than 3 seconds. I think that's definitely for me. So
awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Ben. It has been a wonderful.
Thank you. And this conversation we need to have more and more, isn't it? Really. And you're keeping it in the greens, having been in the reds at some point. That's my concept, keeping it in the greens. And for anybody listening, please recognize when you're in the reds, like Christo has, and let's turn it into the green, keeping it in the greens, like Christo has as well. And we'll do that together. And then the force of humanity together is just absolutely wonderful. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Christo. And to all watching, please do remember to keep it in the greens, and take care, everybody.